no mistake. When the digital infrastructure of the state is under siege, this is an assault on the state. Its effects are devastating and we need a strong response. What are cyber attacks? Cyber attacks are actions in the digital sphere that seek to create tangible damage in the state. Often, cyber attacks are self-propagating because they involve viruses or malware which are injected by phishing emails or hacking into a vulnerable spot within the firewall and then replicating itself to infect the entire computer network and take it down to create damage within the state. Topically, this refers to, for instance, the Russian election rigging within the American 2016 presidential race and Russian Petya ransomware attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. What is a military retaliation? This refers to a targeted and judicious use of the military as a response. Obviously, we don't have to stand for full-scale invasion as we saw in Afghanistan and Iraq. What's our stance? 1. We support the use of military retaliation as one of a toolkit of measures that states can use, against cyber attacks. This is important. We can use a range of different forms of military responses. This could look like surgical drone strikes on the basis of cyber attackers and their server centers, or it could also refer to sending strategic bombers near their airspace or building up troops at their borders to send a clear signal without actually having to invade their physical territory. Before I move on, yes?
Do you really think that it's proportional to attack intelligence buildings or just houses of people you claim to be hackers because of what happened to, let's say, your banks in the case of Estonia?
Oh, we think it is proportional when we had the Russian Petya attack, literally crippling the entire energy infrastructure for 36 hours, leaving millions of people without electricity. You need to understand the context in this debate. Continuing with our policy. 2. To be clear, military retaliation can be accompanied by cyber retaliation where appropriate. But we think that cyber responses have a propensity to be indiscriminate. So we think that standard military retaliation is better. But in unique cases where cyber retaliation can be controlled, we think that's something we're willing to do as well. 3. Obviously, we will factor in other concerns like geopolitical tensions. But these geopolitical tensions are true regardless of whether the response is cyber or military in nature. This debate is about whether a military response is both optimal and justified in a response to a cyber attack. Opposition's burden is to prove that military retaliation is never a justified response to cyber attacks. We have 3 arguments. 1. A military response is a justified form of retaliation. 2. It is the most effective form of retaliation. And 3. My second speaker will explain how we increase international attention on cyber warfare. First argument, military retaliation is a justified form of retaliation. My thesis is that cyber attacks constitute an attack on the state, and thus a military response is not just justified, but also proportionate. When is a military response justified? It is justified when other nations attack your sovereignty and threaten the existence of your state. For instance, if another nation fires missiles at your military bases, then under international law, you will be justified in retaliating. We think that cyber attacks are similar because in the modern technological era, digital infrastructure is often more important than anything else because it affects all other aspects of the society, like your military, your economy, and state services. They are all premised on cyber infrastructure. Cyber attack is an attack on the state on 2 grounds. 1. It is an attack on our politics. Cyber attacks are often used to manipulate democracies and the very elections that define the governance of a democratic state. For instance, Russia's hacking into the voter registries in the US in 2016 was an attempt to deny Democrats the vote and to change the ballots that were cast through electronic voting systems. Though the means are different, the outcome is no different from sending mercenary troops to intimidate voters and force elections in a certain way. The very premise of our democracy is attacked. Also, cyber attacks are used to sabotage foreign relations. In June 2016, Iran hacked the Qatari state news agency, posting reports that vehemently criticized Saudi Arabia rather. This is a key contributor to the current instability we see in the Middle East that is hurting millions of innocent people on the ground. Such an egregious attack on our sovereign control principally justifies a military response. Second ground, a cyber attack affects the basic functioning of a state. Because our digital infrastructure is so intertwined, attacks like ransomware have huge ramifications on our infrastructure, from our energy to our water pumps to our gas pipelines. For instance, the WannaCry attack, which came from Russia-sponsored attackers, crippled the NHS, shutting down patient records and health data for 36 hours across the whole of the United Kingdom, denying thousands of people access to basic healthcare facilities. It also refers to the Russian Petya ransomware attacks that crippled the critical energy infrastructure in Ukraine, causing a blackout in 3/4 of the nation. That means no lights, no heaters, and no transport for millions of people on the ground. These are vulnerable people who are hurt on their side. And we haven't even seen the worst, because we haven't even seen cases where entire stock markets and entire welfare systems are destroyed by cyber attacks. Therefore, not only is cyber warfare analogous to other acts of military aggression, it is worse because it is very targeted, because it can self-perpetuate across an entire infected machine to bring down an entire network. The long-term ramifications are real. Therefore, we think that the traditional conception of what military aggression is that justifies a military retaliation is outdated. It ignores the modern-day tactics of cyber warfare. Cyber attacks intrude on our sovereignty, so it is justified for a military response. My second argument is that a military response is the most effective form of retaliation. Thus far, we've already proven why we should support a military response because it is a legitimate response that states should use. But we're going to go a step further. We're going to show you why in the vast majority of cases, it is the preferable tool. 3 structural reasons. 1, it is more effective than, say, a cyber retaliation. A cyber retaliation is often ineffective because the aggressors know that you are coming. This means that they can create deliberate traps in the servers they use to launch an attack. For instance, when America retaliated against China in 2014, China created cyber exploits in anticipation. This means that while America was trying to retaliate, China was able to track American networks, and they later used this data subsequently to hack into Office of Personnel Records of 8.2 million civil servants, compromising civil servants and active CIA and military agents. Furthermore, a striking back via the cyberspace is ineffective because your attackers can simply create new virtual networks. They can create new IP addresses. The key feature of the cyber war is that it is mobile. Comparatively, a military response directly solves the root cause. For instance, we can use surgical drone strikes to directly take out the key server centers, thereby destroying the fixed physical infrastructure that is used to launch these cyber attacks once and for all. This means that we are more effective. 2, because a military response is more preferable. Before we move on, yes?
Are cyber attacks always carried out by states upon another state?
Not necessarily, but we think in the vast majority of cases, the context is it comes from either the state or state-sponsored hackers. 2, it is morally preferable. It is precisely because cyber attacks have a propensity to be indiscriminate, because it can infect across an entire network and indiscriminately hurt innocents, that a military response is far more targeted. We can use ground research to search for civilian collateral, we can use surgical weaponry. Because the digital infrastructure is so interwoven, it is easy for retaliatory viruses to enter domains they're not supposed to, so they will cause immense collateral. 3rd reason, because we should not fear backlash. If opposition's argument is that a military response will anger the aggressor, that's true of any form of retaliation, whether it's cyber or military. If they are saying that a nation is likely to be angered only and uniquely by a military response, then it's premised on the notion that a military response is better than a cyber response. That is an archaic notion. But just because the aggressor is angered is not a reason to not defend our sovereignty. If we don't respond on a sufficient scale, this means that aggressor states will be emboldened. They will think that they are not caught, they will think that the other nation is too weak. This means we will see more cyber warfare in the long term on their side. What we need to hear from opposition is why we should remove an entire range of the most effective military responses to devastating cyber warfare. That's why we believe that an attack on our cyberspace is an attack on our living space. We propose.
The previous speaker, 10, 8 minutes and 11 seconds. 8 minutes and 11 seconds.
I thank the first opposition for the speech.
Singapore of why we think in the case of cyber warfare, a military attack is justified, where one, that it is justified because it threatens directly the sovereignty of your country, and 2, that this military attack is the most effective way to deal with this problem. Let's deal with both of these. One, when they come up here and tell us, ladies and gentlemen, that these governments' sovereignty is being threatened when you talk about the Russian hacking in democratic countries. The first question that we really ask when we ask them in the PY, is it always really the government who carries out these attacks? And they said not necessarily. We tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you know the reality of the situation, in the majority of cases, the government isn't even associated with these groups that carry out these attacks. When you talk about, let's say, ladies and gentlemen, in North Korea, when you had the cyber attack against the US, you never were able to find out whether the North Korean government actually carried out this attack or whether it was just hacking groups like anonymous, ladies and gentlemen, or crowdsourced that carry out these attacks. In that case, why do you feel, ladies and gentlemen, that the government of those countries can be held culpable for something that only private anonymous groups carried out? But secondly, when they come up here and talk about sovereignty, we think, ladies and gentlemen, that they're really overplaying what these cyber attacks really do, because it's not that big of an assault. When we talk about cases like power outrage, okay, fine. But does that really justify an attack that necessarily will involve the loss of life and bloodshed? Does that really necessarily justify death, ladies and gentlemen? That was a link that Team Proposition needed to prove to us they never did. Moving on to the second thing, why it is effective. When they come up here and say, ladies and gentlemen, that cyber attacks are indiscriminate, you cannot target people effectively with it, and so a military attack is much more pinpointed. Really? As a military attack, really that much more pinpointed? Have you never heard of collateral damage happening when you carry out military attacks, especially the kind of military attacks Team Proposition wants to talk about? Drone attacks, ladies and gentlemen, or surgical strikes. You are obviously indiscriminately killing people in that case as well. Your own endpoints are not even being met. But especially when they come up here and talk about how cyber attacks are that indiscriminate. Exactly. Even in that case, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot track which group exactly carried out this attack in most cases. If you can't do that, how can you carry out an attack on just likelihood that some particular group threatened us? You need to prove that to us. You haven't done that. But more so, let's ask him a couple of questions in this case. First, when they come up here and define cyber attacks, we think, ladies and gentlemen, that they never really dealt with what cyber attacks really do. They carry out three things in many cases. One, they carry out the corruption of data. Two, they carry out the stealing of data. And three, they carry out the releasing of that data to the public. Team Proposition needs to tell us that are they carrying out this military attack in all three of these cases, especially when you talk about things like just corrupting data aren't even that harmful that they necessarily justify a military attack in response. Second question, what degree of harm needs to be inflicted in order to carry out an intervention? Or military attack. Because when you talk about, let's say, in the North Koreans, ladies and gentlemen, they carried out a cyber attack against the US in 2014 when they released a movie called The Interview much more before its release date. Does that necessarily justify a military attack on them? Team Proposition needs to tell us that. Third question, which countries would you do this against? Let's say, ladies and gentlemen, that tomorrow North Korea carries out a military attack against the US. Would you honestly respond in terms of a military attack against North Korea, a country as rogue and a country as volatile as that state? We think that you're provoking an all-out war. Team Proposition needs to tell us how can they do that in all of these scenarios. Final question. What about countries, ladies and gentlemen, where there's an asymmetry in military might? So, for example, Russia, ladies and gentlemen, carried out a hacking attack against Estonia in 2008. Does Team Proposition honestly expect Estonia, a country like Estonia, to stand up to Russia and carry out a military attack in that country? What are they going to do about that there? Team and Proposition's endpoints are not being met. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to our own substantives. We tell you that this House would not support military retaliation against cyber attacks because, firstly, it is principally unjustified because it is a disproportional response. Secondly, military retaliation is ineffective and counterproductive, especially when other alternatives exist. And thirdly, no thank you sir, it deters white hackers and takes away from the good they do to improve cyber security. Let's move on to my first argument, why it's principally unjustified because it is a disproportional response. The first thing that we tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is when you analyze this nature of these cyber attacks, so cases like North Korea leaking that film in the interview early, when we talk about Estonia hacking Estonia's bank accounts being hacked by Russia and halted for a day. In all of these cases, ladies and gentlemen, we think that in the worst case scenarios, even in those cases, we think that these cyber attacks have not in any case led to the loss of life, not in any case led to the damage of physical property or bodily harm. The most basic of cases in which you think a military attack is justified. All they have generally led to are things like financial losses, things like power outages, things like the invasion of privacy. In all of these cases, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you that the degree of outcomes does not warrant the loss of life in return, which is something that they've conceded to will happen in their case when you talk about military retaliation. And why do we feel that it is not justified? So when we talk about international law, ladies and gentlemen, we think that in order to talk about a just attack on another country, the most basic tenet is proportionality of response. And we don't think that that exists in this case. Because we've shown to you, ladies and gentlemen, that a cyber warfare is never equal to a loss of life. And hence, it is absolutely not proportional in this case. Team Proposition has also agreed to that. Finally, we think in this case, it is particularly unjustified because you're targeting those who are not responsible. How? When we talk about the nature of these cyber attacks, ladies and gentlemen, the first thing that we tell you is that we're talking about, in many cases, hacker groups, not countries. So groups like Anonymous, in that case, why should the government be held culpable for something that they did not even do? But second, we also tell you, and they also pointed out this analysis, it is often difficult to pinpoint and trace exactly where this attack occurred, because they carry out these attacks to things like proxies, to things like rerouting IP addresses to multiple countries and talking about planting false sites. I'll take you in a minute, sir. In this case, when you talk about setting up these false sites, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of likelihood that you often select the wrong person and blame them, which is why we think that in no situation can we justify an attack against a country when we can't even, in most cases, prove that they are the ones who are culpable or they are the ones to blame. So in the first argument, we tell you it's not justified in terms of proportionality and the justice of punishing who the actual criminal is. Before moving on to the second argument, go ahead, sir.
All your cherry-picked examples of North Korea and Estonia are issues with the nature of North Korea and Estonia, not an issue with the cyber attack they caused.
We think that all of our analysis related to how most of these attacks are carried out by anonymous groups apply to every particular thing in every particular hacker group. So it's not just North Korea. We talk about examples like Estonia. We talk about examples like how in the case of the NSA, ladies and gentlemen, it was attacked recently through ransomware. Even in that case, you don't necessarily know who is carrying out these attacks. Team Proposition needs to engage with that. Let's talk about now the second argument, where we tell you why it's ineffective and counterproductive. So first, we tell you it's obviously going to lead to more hostility because the response in this case is much more than what was actually provoked in the first case. So it's obviously going to lead to an escalation of conflict because your response is that much more than what was provoked. But second, because we tell you that we cannot trace who the real criminal is, in this case, the military retaliation against the person who you think is the most likely is counterproductive because innocent governments are being caught up and we're angering them by punishing them for something they did not commit. So why do you think alternatives in this case are much better? The first thing that we tell you is that we can prevent ourselves from harm like cyber attacks by spending money on increasing our own cyber security. So in the case of ransomware, when NSA was attacked, we think that the only reason why their security was breached was because they were still using Windows XP operating systems, an operating system that is now obsolete and has been obsolete for a decade, ladies and gentlemen. Our policy is that we should work on them rather than going on the offensive. But even if it's on the offensive, ladies and gentlemen, we think on the last resort option, if everything else fails, a cyber security is much more proportional in this case rather than a military attack. Team Proposition, ladies and gentlemen, has not proven any of its burdens for that simple reason, vote Pakistan.
The speaker spent 8 minutes and 23 seconds. 8 minutes and 23 seconds.
I'm taking the first opposition speaker for this speech. And now to continue the case for the proposition, please welcome Ryan Reed.
I think it's pretty clear that Team Opposition prepared for the wrong debate when their definition is that cyber attacks are the corruption, the stealing, and the release of data by non-state actors. I think they failed to deal with the bulk of the analysis we gave you of how there are many more attacks. Petty attacks on Ukrainian energy supplies, Iranian attacks on Yemeni water supplies, attacks on infrastructure that cause real tangible harm. But even in the case of anonymous attacks, we told you very clearly from first how if there is an infringement on your sovereignty, then you are justified in responding with a military response. So, they have missed the bulk of this debate and strawmanned our entire case. Two questions. Why is military retaliation justified? Second, why is it the best response? First, on why is it justified? To be clear, my first speaker said that we are willing to engage on both non-state and state actors. If we could really find the server that Anonymous uses, sure, we will be willing to stand for sending a drone strike to attack or sending a strategic team to take down their resources. The difference is that they are telling us that in no situation, even when we are sure of who carried it out, then they are not willing to use cyber attacks. So we said,
we have to understand that the vast majority of the cases where we do know and where response is actually an option is in the case of states, because we understand where these attacks came from. Furthermore, all of their attacks are not actually specific to the motion. Why? If the problem is that you can't identify who actually did it, then you can't stand for any response, because any response is not going to be targeted at all. In which case, they stand for doing nothing at all to retaliate against infringements on your privacy, on stealing of billions of dollars, on huge harms to your infrastructure. So we said this debate meaningfully takes place when we have at least some clue on where the attack comes from. Furthermore, we think a military response probably requires lots of resources. Most of the time, governments are careful, so therefore they often take care to gather intelligence before they actually use the military response. Furthermore, they just mischaracterized my first speaker's case. We are not standing for some outright loss of life in the thousands and millions of people. To be clear, we talked about how there are a spectrum of military responses we can use. We can use things like, for example, sending drone strikes, sending surgical SEAL Team 6 teams into the area to take down their servers or to take down their hacker groups. These are all responses that require, that have a targeted, very specific killing of the person who is involved, or a specific targeting of the resources that are involved. So our side is much more targeted. I want to hear the next speaker what exactly their response is, because by their case, it seems like they won't be responding at all. But to be clear, when they said we were overplaying the impacts of cyber attack, I think they just first respond to the 3 tiers my first speaker gave you. The idea of political attacks, which mind you, disrupt your government, which mind you can put your entire country in danger, as we see in the current Gulf crisis in the Middle East, because they stir up tensions between countries. The idea of infrastructural attacks, where your entire water supplies, power outages, which mind you can actually lead to loss of life when someone is cold at night and there's no heating to keep them warm. The idea of future economic attacks, which mind you can result in huge panic in the stock market, that leads to falling prices, that leads to falling wages, that leads to money becoming devalued, which means you don't have money to buy basic necessities, which results in a loss of life. So even on their metric of direct loss to life, we have won this debate, because we have shown you how cyber attacks actually do result in loss of life. But I want to be clear, from the start I told you that it is misrepresentative for them to say loss of life is the metric in this debate. We talked about how it is an infringement on the fundamental sovereignty of no state. They actually have to deal with our principle. So we can agree that proportionality is a metric, but we think it is perfectly proportional for our response on our side. Therefore, we think it is justified to use these attacks. Second question, on is it the best way? So at 7 minutes, we hear that second substantive, and it's on escalation and other things about Windows XP. Let's take on escalation first. Obviously, they weren't listening very well to my first speaker, because he had nice preemptive rebuttals against this. The idea of how you embolden them even more, when, as I said very early on, they probably stand for no responses. They say, we can't know who carried out the attack. In that case, you embolden them to engage in even more powerful cyber attacks. So, if the infrastructural attacks aren't happening now, they will happen in the future. If Anonymous is currently stealing and releasing information, in the future, it'll be billions of dollars that cause stock markets to crash. Before I move on, yes?
If a country launches a military strike on you versus they send their entire troops into your country, will your response be the same?
Obviously there are a spectrum of military responses. We will use a stronger military response if you are literally putting troops on our territory. But we think it's pretty analogous to putting troops on your territory when you are literally shutting down infrastructure and cutting off water supply. So sure, whatever that analogy was supposed to be. Moving back to my case, obviously we told you, escalation is not specific to this debate. They embolden them even more, causing even more escalation in the long term. Then there are 20 seconds of standard on how we have Windows XP, and that's a solution to all the problems we talked about. Number one, they use Windows XP because it was supposed to be secure. Number two, this debate is about what happens when the cyber attacks already taken place and we need to respond. So if it actually happens, then how are they going to respond? 3, the idea is that hackers are becoming more sophisticated. If they want to deal with the non-state hackers like Anonymous, I would suggest they probably are finding out how to break through Windows XP anyway. But it did not respond to my first speaker's analysis on how it's more effective, because cyber retaliation doesn't work because these countries are ready for it and these non-state hackers are ready for it. Military response is the only way to combat the mobile nature of a cyber attack, to take down the actual server centers and command centers. 2 tiers of logic that they did not respond. I want to hear a response in the next speaker. My constructive for today on how acknowledging that cyber attacks are an actual act of war increases international attention on cyber warfare. I think all of us in this room can agree that it's generally a good idea for weapons, either by non-state actors or by state actors, to be governed by international frameworks. Before I move on, yes?
You do realize that servers can also be broken down by cyber attacks in response?
Sir, that's exactly why you needed to respond to my first speaker's analysis on why, number one, when they are ready for it, a cyber attack is effective because the country is not ready for it. But when the hacker itself knows that its own servers will be attacked, it is much harder to have a cyber response. Furthermore, we proved to you very clearly that even if there are other options that can achieve the same thing, our point is that it is justified to use military response. Moving back to my constructive. To be clear, we think international frameworks to govern these things are generally a good thing. Whenever there's a new weapon introduced into the world, we generally evolve our frameworks to meet these changing contexts. This is why after nuclear weapons appeared in the 1940s, we created organizations like the IAEA. We created treaties like the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to ensure we can govern and ensure responsible use of this new weapon. We think that today we are in limbo because a new type of weapon has emerged. The idea of cyber attacks, as we said, can cause devastating harm to your country. It is time that we do the similar thing and introduce international frameworks. Why is outside the solution? Currently, the main problem is that cyber attacks are not acknowledged as an actual act of war. We do not acknowledge the huge amounts of harm that they can cause tangibly, physically. We do not acknowledge how they can lead to loss of life, much like putting troops into a country. That is why in the UN there is literally no council to discuss cyber warfare. There are councils on chemical weapons, there are councils on nuclear weapons, but there is no council on cyber warfare. On our side, we are much luckier to ensure that we have this international attention that we actually need. Why is this the case? Because when we acknowledge, when we recognize that it is an act of war, when we recognize that non-state actors who are carrying out these things can cause huge amounts of tangible physical harm to you, when we acknowledge that non-state actors are anonymous, are actually threatening to our own infrastructure and the way our state functions, this is when we are likely to have more discourse in the international sphere about how to regulate these types of weapons. We are likely to have treaties where countries agree to, for example, turn over certain cyber weapons to each other. We are likely to have discourse in, for example, the UN on what regulations on when cyber regulation can be used. We are likely to have non-state actors dealing with the highest ground, non-state actors being regulated away and talked to by international bodies. We are likely to have rules on prosecuting anonymous hackers who are captured by states. All of this is good because it ensures we adapt to the modern world and it ensures that we now have a way to have an international response to the problem we are facing today. We understood from first that an attack on our cyberspace is an attack on our living space. We propose.
Yes, regard span 8 minutes and 4 seconds. 8 minutes and 4 seconds.
I find the second proposition speaker for their speech. And now, to continue the case for the opposition, please welcome Moise Jehangir.
So we asked them, what exactly is the metric whereby you would support a military intervention? What is like the least possible thing that has to be done before you send a drone into another country and blow up some intelligence office? We said there are three major types: corruption, stealing, and releasing of information. Actually, the only two examples that they gave you in first proposition play right into these. The case of the DNC and the case of Ukraine. They come up in second proposition and literally lie to you about the fact that somehow in Yemen and Iran you had the cutting off of water supplies as a result of a cyber attack. This is exactly what Team Singapore does. They lie, they misrepresent. We lost a semi-final to them in 2015 and they got away with it. We don't want it to happen again. They haven't conclusively shown us that even the extent of these kinds of attacks is as big as they're making them out to be. Two major questions. Actually three. Number one, is it justified and proportional? Number two, is there really a need for a military response? And number three, is it really effective? Before I move on to my own positive case. Is it justified and proportional? They said, well, it's an attack on your sovereignty and somehow your existence as a state. But what we say is that even if it's an attack on your sovereignty, does it justify death or potential death as a response? Because for them to come up and say that we would have a very effective targeted attack is simply a lie. Because the mechanism that they want to use, surgical strikes or drone strikes, we're from Pakistan, we know exactly what drone strikes look like, there's a lot of collateral damage, we think it's a huge problem, right? But then secondly we say, is it really a proportional response when you're attacking people who are not not necessarily responsible for it. Their entire first proposition speech was not about different groups and states, it was only about states. And in the case of the state, or in the case of, let's say, the North Korean attack, you literally couldn't determine whether it was a hacker group or whether it was the government within the first place, right? So we think that a lot of the time what you end up doing is attacking people who aren't responsible. Because look at their own language. They say Russian-sponsored hackers and cyber terrorists, right? Not Russian intelligence officers themselves. Because you don't only, and when you attack a server center or let's say some intelligence office, you don't kill necessarily the people who are responsible for it or who even gave the orders to carry out the cyber attack. You kill people who aren't responsible for anything. A janitor working at a service center who literally had no part to play in this, who is not a troop or a soldier of the other side, is someone who is literal collateral damage as a result of your military intervention or your surgical strike. We on side opposition say that collateral is intrinsically unjust. It's particularly problematic because you're punishing people who haven't been responsible for the attack that they carried out, and more than that, they have not proved to us yet why it justifies the loss of life. Secondly, is there really a need, right? Because we say, look, even if we were to accept your premise that sovereignty is breached, and you have a justification to respond, why does that response necessarily have to be the most extreme form of response? Why does it have to be military? Because if cyber attacks are so incredibly detrimental to a state and so incredibly effective, then why not just launch a cyber attack in return? We really don't understand that. Because and then, you know what they said? The reason that we can't launch a cyber attack in return is really interesting. This is actually brilliant because we feel like this wins us the debate, right? They say you can't have a just cyber attack in response because the other side is ready for it. Well, if they can be ready for it, then why can't the US government and the US Department of Defense fund and actually get ready for it to come to that level of like superiority of intelligence and technology to not be victim of that kind of attack in the first place? Clearly, if cyber attacks are so bad and you can be ready for them, their policy has absolutely no need and a military response is not justified. Lastly, will it even be effective? Here we again ask you, are you really even targeting the right people? I'll take you in a minute. Because you haven't necessarily proven that you would, and I'll tell you why that's a problem. Yes.
To be clear, how would you respond to a devastating cyber attack on your country?
Well, first, we already told you a number of different things, a number of different alternatives. Then number one, let's say, if it comes on part of like, in the majority of cases, an anonymous group or different sort of anonymous individuals that you can't necessarily trace, we think the first and major response is to actually just beef up your own cybersecurity so that you're not victim of it again. If it is from a state, then what you should do is use diplomatic mechanisms to try and end conflict. You don't necessarily have to respond. But thirdly, even if you do, in the worst of cases, have to respond, why can't you use a cyber attack to do so that has the proportional response in any case, right? So then we ask you in this policy a point about effectiveness. Will it even target the right people? They haven't proven that they would because they said like in the majority of cases, we can actually find servers that the group Anonymous actually uses. You realize how ridiculous that sounds. You actually can't do that, right? Because these people are diffused amongst your population. They're literally hidden. They bounce and route around their IPs like God knows what. And what they essentially do is that they live in their own housing communities on computer servers that are independent or linked with one another and covered up, so it's very difficult for governments to trace them. And so literally you would be sending like a drone into a housing community in order to clamp down on the kind of hacking that groups like Anonymous do. We think that that's ridiculous. But secondly, what we say is that you actually are counterproductive to your own end because you just anger people and increase the same problems, right? If they're talking about emboldening, in which world do you embolden these cyber terrorists more? In a world where you actively attack them and send like drone strikes against people who are part of their groups, or when you simply try and beef up your own cybersecurity or go through diplomatic means, you embolden them in Proposition's world. Secondly, we gave you a point about, you know, in what circumstances, in what cases would you be okay with this, depending on the state, because would you be okay with this military response in response to like North Korea doing it? We don't think so. And then lastly, their second speaker case, which was actually quite funny because they said, we need cyber treaties, the way we're going to get there is to create awareness, and the only way we can create awareness is through military intervention. We think that that is quite redundant, it's quite ridiculous, and there are many other ways in which you can actually create some sort of international law or international, some platform for international security or treaties thereby for cyber warfare and cyber terrorism within the world without your policy. Yes.
My first speaker told you on how cyber attacks are very indiscriminate because they end up harming civilians. So if your metric is proportionality, how in the world is cyber a retaliation, a proportionate response?
You haven't given us one example thus far of a case in which someone has actually lost their life as a result of a cyber attack. Once you can show us that, then maybe we can come onto your grounds and do that. But if your metric is that they have cut off somehow in the world water supplies, then the most proportional response is do that back to them, not go out and kill people indiscriminately. So I'm going to talk to you about why it deters white hackers and why that takes away from a lot of good that they do. What do I mean by white hackers? We think that these are currently individuals and groups that attack government networks and government mainframes and softwares of other countries to expose weaknesses within their own government systems. They do this either because in some cases they're actually paid by governments to do it, in some cases it's just like a hobby of theirs, and in a lot of cases they actually get a reward out of it. We think that these are really useful and important individuals because they allow them to deter and they allow governments to deter and protect from actual attacks when they come up for real. So in 2013, you had this group called CyberSource that was essentially a group of Australian hackers that hacked a UK mainframe and exposed weaknesses within their own systems, within their own networks, right? But when we know that the possible response that a state could have is the chance of an actual war or the loss of life in response to that, what happens is that these individuals, these white hackers, essentially who contribute a lot to the protection of your own cybersecurity are those which we greatly deterred. Their role essentially becomes redundant and they don't have an incentive to act anymore. We think that it's incredibly problematic to your own cybersecurity. One, we think that it's incredibly important to protect. Because there's no need, because it's unjustified, and because it's not even effective for Pakistan.
The previous speaker spends 8 minutes and 24 seconds. 8 minutes and 24 seconds.
I thank the second opposition speaker for their speech. And now, to continue the case for the proposition, please welcome our way home.
I want to be very clear what our burden is in this debate, because honestly, the strategy coming from their side has been to misrepresent what military response and retaliation is. It is not sending a drone and killing an innocent civilian in their housing neighborhood. That makes absolutely no sense. What we are standing for are targeted solutions. Will they be absolutely perfect? No, but neither are your cyber attacks only introduced in second speaker going to be perfect on your side of the house. Because as we said since first, cyber attacks inherently are indiscriminate when you send a virus and corrupt the entire digital infrastructure, which can lead into banks, which can lead into the economy, which can lead into state services. So honestly, if your policy shift in second speaker is to retaliate with a cyber attack, I think more civilians die on your side of the house. So let's be very clear. We have a gradated response on outside the house and they need to engage with the nuance we presented. They ask us, but what is the threshold before we will actually use a military response? To the extent that you severely rig an election completely, we think that's a perfectly fair response. To the extent that you destroy basic services such as your banking system that destroy people's entire assets that they've saved over entire years, we're more than happy to respond in those areas as well. 3 areas of clash. First, is this proportionate? Second, can we identify the aggressor? And third, are there any alternatives? Late responses we heard in second. First, is it proportionate? The first issue under this is the damage caused by a cyber attack large on our side of the house? We said from the beginning of this debate that given we're living a modern technological era, cyber attacks have huge implications on our ability. We say it's self-propagating, where a virus can corrupt not just a specific area, but bleeds into other areas. That's the whole point of a virus. It's uncontrolled. It spreads exponentially within digital infrastructure. Because of the modern technological era, in the majority of circumstances, the harm caused on the entire countries are huge. We talked about the NHS. When somebody who has a heart attack on that day literally cannot find her a doctor because all of the medical records are being removed on that day itself. People cannot access dialysis treatment because all the information about their history of their medical records are being wiped out from these computers within that moment itself. People's lives are being threatened in these circumstances. Absolutely no response from their team. We talked about how the Ukraine power grid was destroyed. We're literally talking about poor communities who now no longer have access to clean water or electricity to even live through multiple nights on your side of the house. Don't tell me that people aren't being hurt. Respond to the analysis we provided. So let's be clear, there's a huge cost when it comes to cyber attacks on your side of the house. Therefore, are we justified in responding? They say that on outside the house there'll be a lot of collateral damage and huge loss of lives. We ask them, why? As with all military operations, we're going to do our research first. We're going to identify whether there are any civilian areas within the region. We're going to use the most targeted weaponry. We're not going to send giant bombs and airstrikes against these places. The only response we got was, but you know, drone strikes aren't really that perfect. Well, first of all, that's not inherent within the definition of a military response. That's incidental to a unique version of a military response. They've not given us structural reasons why all military responses, by definition, are always indiscriminate and cause collateral damage. If they do so in third opposition, it'll be way too late. But here's what's the comparative. Because on the other side of the house, when they stand for a cyber retaliation, because all of the analysis we provide says first, there'll be even more indiscriminate attacks on your side of the house. So in fact, their side is the side that's disproportionate. They have no response to the self-propagating nature of viruses and cyber attacks, and we don't think their side is engaged with all of our analysis. But let's be clear, it's not just that we are legitimate in responding, there's an urgency for us to respond. We say that our sovereignty was challenged. Principal analysis is first, we have absolutely no response to this. We say how this often attacks the political existence of your state, the very fundamentals of your democracy, and the mandate of your government to rule over the entire country. Also, your international relations. When Iraq hacked Qatar's news agencies and caused tensions with Saudi Arabia, all of these things are incredibly important because it affects the existence of the state itself. We have no response to this. We also talk about how it attacks functioning of basic state services. Principal analysis is first, no response from their side of the house.
Fine, sir.
Yes.
If someone steals all of your money, takes away your bank account, is it still justified to kill them in response?
No, but I just spent all of my analysis telling you why we're not killing them. And if you take away all of their money and all of the children die on your side of the house, that is worse, right? Second point of contention, whether they can identify the person. The second speakers of standing began is this idea of good hackers. First of all, if this was like a sparring program, right? The state would have informed the other state that they were doing this to begin with. Second of all, this is not a cyber attack. It's definitionally called bounty hunting. It's a completely different area from malicious cyber attacks intended to destroy another country. Second of all of the examples from North Korea and Estonia are issues with the nature of North Korea being a pariah state or Estonia being a small country. It has nothing to do with the nature of the cyber attack and why those countries should not respond at all. The only thing we have left therefore is this idea of non-state actors. The first thing I'd like to point out, this is a very small sliver of this debate because the only example they've given us is anonymous. Cyber attacks occur on a daily basis within multiple countries on a daily basis. You can't tell me that anonymous is representative of all these cyber attacks that are currently happening. They give us no systemic reason to suggest why cyber attacks are prone to be done by non-state actors rather than state actors. Just because it's diffused does not mean that it's the majority of circumstances. We say that cyber warfare is incredibly common in the modern era precisely because a lot of military information is put online. That's why state actors tend to use cyber warfare a lot. We say that Russian hackers are state-sponsored because in order for you to have an effective attack on their cyber infrastructure, you need to spend a lot of money in identifying the loopholes within their technological system. No non-state actor, unless a single example of anonymous, has so much resources unless the state gives them all of this money. So systemically speaking, in the vast majority of circumstances, it's likely that it's state actors that engage in these things to begin with. The last response was, but we don't know for sure, right? We can never make it sure, but What about Russian mercenaries in Ukraine that went in to create civil strife within the region? The point is this: we will never be able to know for sure whether he was a soldier of the state unless we literally capture him and interrogate him. We will never know for sure. But if there's sufficient reason to guess this to beyond reasonable doubt, we think there's sufficient for us to take military action. So on our side of the house, it's not true that we're going to destroy a janitor's life. We're not invading the house. I think it's a massive misrepresentation coming from their side of the house. Lastly, on alternatives. Firstly, they say we can just beef up the system. We say that's not mutually exclusive. The question we posed to the second speaker, to which they haven't answered, is after the attack, after you have failed, what should the response be? They will never be able to respond to this. Furthermore, they say we can just have cyber attacks and retaliation. But as I've already mentioned, this in fact causes more harms on your side of the house. But there are two systemic reasons why any alternative they want to give us, even if there's a new one, the third speaker, will be inefficient. Firstly, because they know that you are coming. The response was, but the US can prepare for it as well. But the whole point of a cyber attack is to catch you off guard. It's to catch you where you haven't prepared yourself for. And it's impossible for the state to be perfectly protected, right? Even the US, which has so much money put into cyber protection, wasn't able to protect themselves from DNC hackings. So I don't think their side has engaged with all the analysis of how these aggressor countries create traps for you, which not only means that it's ineffective for you, it often makes it in a worse situation. There's no response to this. But furthermore, we say that these tech servers can be easily mobile, right? When you take down one server, they'll just online create another server. What you need to do is destroy the infrastructure of the server to begin with, so they cannot build the next server to begin with, right? That's why China regularly changes the digital signatures and IP addresses of its hackers, so that the US cannot respond sufficiently online. They can only respond by taking military responses. For all of these reasons, we need to take a strong response against an attack on our living space. We are very proud to propose.
Previous speaker spends 8 minutes and 13 seconds. 8 minutes and 13 seconds.
I find the third proposition speaker for the speech. And now to continue the case for the opposition, please welcome Zainab Faisal.
Cyber attacks are so effective as they literally threaten the basis of your states. Exact words coming from first proposition. They can shut down your power supplies. They can somehow also shut down your water supplies. That apparently happened in Yemen. By the way, that's a lie. It never happened in Yemen. But moreover, they're so effective that all of these problems can exist. If they're so effective, then why don't you use those same cyber attacks to counter any sort of aggression that your state might get? And the only response that we got from that was because if you have cyber attacks, you have indiscriminate killing. And they asked us when they said this, they said, you have to show to us why military retaliation in any and all form is bad. And we did show this to you. We said that no matter how targeted you try to make it, there will always be collateral damage. The Osama bin Laden targeted drone strike, even though it's literally the most targeted drone strike in the world by the US government and defense system, even there, 7 innocent people were collateral damage and they lost their lives. Even the most targeted form that you could ever get. No, thank you, madam. But even in our model, if you have some sort of collateral damage, if there is some sort of indiscriminate retaliation, that is never in the form of life like they said it. Under their model, if you have these military retaliation, the collateral will always be in the form of life. Under ours, even if we take their best case scenario of water shortages and power outages, no one's life gets taken away. And that is the inherent difference between our model and their model. But moreover, let's talk to you about the shift that took place, no thank you sir, within their cases. You had first speaker who only talked about state versus state retaliation, and you had second speaker who said, okay fine, non-state actors also exist and we'll talk about those, but then you had third speaker who said, you know what, this debate isn't about non-state actors, it's somehow about bounty county bouncers, and we don't really understand what that means or how that plays into this debate. No, thank you, sir. We asked them 3 questions at the beginning of first opposition. Number 1, what is the degree that you will go to? They said when it's devastating, that's not a metric, that's not a criteria. How to ensure that governments follow that, we're not really sure. Second of all, what happens in situations where there's an asymmetry, where countries like Estonia can never react to countries like Russia in a military exercise? What will you do then? No, thank you, sir. Another question that they never answered. The third of all, what happens if countries that don't have the ability to do this or the mechanisms to do this, how exactly would their policy come into play? We're not really sure. These are 3 questions we've asked them in the beginning of first opposition. They still have not responded. So having said that, let's talk about the main issue of today's debate. No, thank you, sir. Number 1, is military retaliation morally permissible in any circumstance? We think it absolutely is not. Second of all, is military, no thank you, sir, military retaliation the most effective means? We don't think it's true. We've given you 3 alternatives and we'll tell you why that's better. Let's talk about the first thing, whether military retaliation is morally permissible or not. Over here, they had 3 main premises. They said, first of all, your sovereignty is impeached. Second of all, the need is that great. And third of all, you have these people who are going to be harmed in your model, innocent civilians because of indiscriminate killing. Let's break all 3 of those premises down. First of all, the sovereignty being impeached. For a second, let's admit, let's concede to the premise that fine, your sovereignty might be impeached. But then, if that logic is true and your sovereignty is impeached, why can't you attack them, no thank you sir, with a cyber attack? Because just because their sovereignty is impeached, that only proves the fact that they need to retaliate, not the fact they have to retaliate in a militaristic point of way. And this is really, really important because that takes away the huge chunk of their analysis, saying that this is something that's really important and we really need to do so. We feel that right now the most important principle that your governments in fact have to uphold is the principle of proportionality. And over here they said, yes, we can have cyber attacks as well if you want to eventually use them. That's not the point. It's not the point that you can use cyber attacks. It's the fact that you can't use any other militaristic mechanism to solve this because it's morally important to do so. Before we tell you why, yes sir.
Your principal issue is that we should respond in the same way they attacked us. So if the cyber attack creates an economic crisis like 2008, should we respond to the cyber attack to create an economic crisis in their country?
Sir, we told you 3 alternatives. We told you first of all you should work towards having better diplomatic relationships, but even before that you should build up your own security systems that ensure that these attacks will never take place. But you're trying to talk about military action, you're taking away the incentive to make these better. But third of all, even if we do think you should go out and attack, you should yes do it in a proportional manner, because if you block down the economic systems, people will not end up dying as collateral damage of drone strikes like in countries like Pakistan individuals do. So believe that even if the sovereignty is impeached, the only thing that proves that there's a need to retaliate. This need, no thank you, sir, isn't even that great or devastating as they put it. Because their best case of examples like Estonia and Ukraine, you had power shortages not for days and nights on end, for literally just 36 hours. We've done in that, even in their best case scenario, the damage and the need that they're trying to portray is not as great, and that's why there's a problem gap solution. Because if the need isn't that great, then going out and having military intervention or exercises, even in the form of drone strikes, is something that's not legitimate and something that we cannot stand for. But moreover, we told you that in a lot of cases, these are non-state actors, people that your state is not able to track down upon. So in the attempt to have military exercises or campaigns that focus on these people, you're going to end up killing innocent civilians that the state cannot go for, and something that they cannot do. No, thank you, sir. Because we've shown to you that the sovereignty is being impeached isn't directly linked to you have military action. In fact, if anything, the concept of proportionality that's literally enshrined within international law can only take place when you have a proportional response that can only happen when you have cyber attacks. The first issue, whether it's morally impermissible, falls conclusively in favor of the opposition. No, thank you, sir. Let's deal with the second. This is the more important thing. The fact is going to be effective. Because even for one moment, if we admit to the fact that their moral stance, which it doesn't, and that it's fine to go out and have an unproportional response, we still don't think that you should adopt military retaliation because it's going to be ineffective as compared to cyber warfare. Let's tell you why. These are the 3 criteria that they set out. They said you can't use military campaigns because number 1, they know that you're coming. Number 2, they can always go out and change the networks. And number 3, even if people get angered, it's not unique to military retaliation. No, thank you, sir. Let's break all 3 of them down. First of all, people know that you're coming. Right, so if your cyber system can be so strong that you know that the enemy is coming, then why can you not build and beef up that cyber system to protect yourself in the first place? But second of all, if your cyber system intelligence is so strong, you know that they are coming, how does that not apply to military tactics where you mobilize your forces or mobilize your intelligence or mobilize your drones in order to use them? Even in that case, they will still know that you are coming. But third of all, if they're so effective that you have the ability and the agencies to know when this intelligence is there, to know that they're coming, you should in fact, no thank you sir, use that in order to tackle these threats. Second of all, they said something about how these new networks and people can come about and change their networks. If they say that, that's a concession on their part, because they admit to the fact, this ability that these individuals are able to hide their identity, and in doing so, they admit that it's hard to track them down, and because of that, the collateral damage exists. But on a third level, when you talk about them telling us that we have to show how anger is unique to military and not to cyber attacks, that's not true. But the degree of anger that you're likely to retaliate if you have a military intervention or any sort is way more than a cyber attack or anything that you're going to go out and fought for. But on the last level, let's talk about the second line of argument. We really didn't understand this because somehow they said that when you use military tactics instead of cyber warfare, you'll have more discussion for some reason on that cyber warfare, and you'll have councils being formed for the first time in history. First of all, that's a lie because the US Department of State already has a cyber warfare council that exists, so you're already having discussions on that status quo. But the only way to solve international relations is not to go out and literally intervene in other countries and solve this problem. But on the last level, the alternatives that we talked about, we said first of all, you can beef up your own system that prevents attacks happening in the future. Second of all, diplomatic relationships and ties with countries can improve and increase. But even if all of those two things don't work, then the best and the only legitimate course of action is proportionality, that can only come when you have cyber attacks because there is no chance of human life being collateral damage. Vote Pakistan.
The first speaker spends 8 minutes and 14 seconds. 8 minutes and 14 seconds.
I thank the third opposition speaker for their speech. We now move to the team's 4-minute reply concluding. 4-minute concluding reply speeches. To deliver the opposition's reply speech, I call upon Moiz Jehangir.
I'll make this really simple. There's 3 things in this debate. Is there even a need? Even if there is a need, is it justified? And even if it's justified, will it actually ever do anything? So firstly, on the point of need. We say that even if we accept Singapore's premise that sovereignty is under threat and a response is justified, they're yet to show us, after 3 speakers, why the most extreme response is the one that should come first. Because we said that if they are so effective, if cyber attacks can do so much damage, then why is that not your major response? We didn't really get an answer from them. Because what they said is that cyber attacks lead to indiscriminate killing and hence they're somehow hurting or damaging less people in their model. This is something or an answer that they tried to imply. But the simple fact of the matter is that nowhere in Singapore's very few examples did we ever get an example of the fact that anyone actually died as a result of a cyber attack, right? They actually shied away from even saying that explicitly. What third proposition says is that it's an attack on like human life and dignity, perhaps. Right? So we don't think that it does lead to indiscriminate killing. If cyber attacks are effective, then why don't you use them as the first response? And lastly, why can't you use cyber defense mechanisms as an alternative, right? Because we said that you can be ready for it. Under their own logic, these other countries can be ready for the cyber attacks. But they said that, you know, the whole point of these cyber attacks in third proposition is that they catch you off guard. Then why can't you simply be on guard? Why can't the United States government literally spend an extra few $1 billion of its military budget in improving its cyber security or defense mechanisms, as opposed to literally playing into the hands of the military-industrial complex under side proposition by literally trying to go to war, right? So we don't see the need for this kind of response at all. They haven't shown it to us, so we think that their policy literally has no need. But secondly, we asked you, is it even justified? Here we gave you the importance of not only proportionality, but attacking the right person. Because firstly, they said that, you know, we're not actually killing people as a result of this because we're talking about sophisticated military tactics. The United States has the most sophisticated military in the world. Even in their best case scenario, if there's a drone strike or a targeted military action or a surgical strike, as you had in the compound of Osama bin Laden, there is still collateral damage that comes about. You still kill people as a response. That in and of itself, even if one person dies, we think is absolutely morally abhorrent, and we don't don't support any side that would essentially propose a policy that does that. We don't have to give you structural reasons. It's simply factually true that collateral damage is always the result of these kinds of even very targeted military interventions or responses. We think side opposition has shown you that it's not justified. But we lastly talked to you about the point of efficacy, right? Because if you're not going out and killing people, then what you're doing is targeting servers. And we already told you why this is so problematic. Because servers or this data doesn't exist in the form of a giant set of computers next to one another. You have things like cloud sharing. This data is spread throughout the entirety of the world. Literally, that data stored is kept on servers, and that data stored or that's been stolen can be kept, it can be released, and those attacks can still be conducted. We never understood the actual efficacy of their policy. Secondly, we told you that you actually only serve by attacking these individuals to embolden and further anger them so that they will come out with a more harsh response. They didn't respond to that in third proposition. We told you about the asymmetry of war. This is another idea that they responded. Because in the worst of cases, in the case of Ukraine, does Ukraine really have the military ability to respond to Russia? This is again, or would you be able to attack North Korea? Another point that they didn't respond to. Lastly, actually more than that, we told you that in a lot of cases you aren't even able to find these hackers because it's not as simple as saying, we know where Anonymous is, we found all of their IP addresses, so we're just going to go attack a building. Because in a lot of cases, it's much, much more difficult than that. Governments have really, really tried, and it's not that easy. We gave you a point about white hackers, to which third proposition never really replied. And lastly, this idea of cyber treaties. But we simply think that if you have to use wars as a means to an end to try and increase the extent of like international cooperation that you can have, we don't support a side that would do that. There is no need, it's not effective, and more than that, we don't support collateral damage, a disproportional response, and we don't believe that an innocent person should be killed. This debate clearly goes to Pakistan.
Previous speaker spends 4 minutes and 28 seconds. 4 minutes and 28 seconds.
And now to conclude the case for the proposition and the debate as a whole, I call upon Ryan Lee.
So it's come to this. All the way down the table, we press them with a consistent case and ask them for responses. Bit by bit, they slowly review their alternatives, their metrics, their responses, and it all becomes clear in third op and op reply. So I apologize if my reply seems a bit messy, but it's because I really have to deal with the mess they just created. Let us look at the two worlds that emerge at the end of this debate. The world of opposition gave us very nice metrics, but didn't actually prove how they win those metrics. So let's take them on the highest. Let's talk about proportionality. We told you how in the world of opposition, they stand for a disproportionate response. We told you how when they finally give us their response on cyber retaliation in their second speaker, that cyber retaliation is the most indiscriminate response you could ever ask for. More than that, in the world of team opposition, they fail to understand that collateral damage alone is not a reason why this response is disproportionate. Every military maneuver might have collateral damage. When we respond and when we understand whether it's proportional is by evaluating the risk of collateral damage against the harm caused by the original attack in itself. And that's why it was so devastating when the world of team opposition failed to respond to the huge human cost of cyber warfare. Because then they fail to understand that it is proportional to respond militarily, even if there's some collateral damage, even on the highest ground. Because this is the one thing that we need to do to respond. In the world of team opposition, they lost on their metric of effectiveness. So their alternatives come out in bits and pieces. They talk about beefing up the system, and then they say that will result in a security against cyber attacks. We told you very clearly that in their world, that is not enough. Number one, because you don't have billions of dollars to just beef up every single energy grid in the US. And more than that, because they have to deal with the question of what happens when a cyber attack actually occurs. They failed to understand what we actually stood for on our side. They said, oh, but there's cloud sharing, so there aren't any CPUs to actually attack. No, the cloud exists, but the data has to be stored on a data center that we can attack on our side. So, a huge misrepresentation coming up from team opposition. The world of team opposition had very, very ineffective alternatives. They said diplomatic pressure. On your own point about Estonia and North Korea, how is Estonia supposed to diplomatically pressure Russia? And we did respond. We did not drop this point because I told you very clearly that all of these points were just generic about military responses and they did not deal with the specificity of the motion. The team of opposition failed to realize the true human cost. They said that we never responded to the idea of a loss of life. We actually did. Right from first, we told you how cutting off gas supplies, even for 36 hours, can result in not you being able to keep warm on a cold winter's night. How even if it's not an immediate loss of life, the loss of billions of dollars, the loss of your livelihood because bank accounts are crashing and money is devalued, is akin to losing the entire things you have worked for so hard your entire life. The Board of Team Opposition failed to understand the true cost, and therefore they failed to respond proportionally in an effective manner. The Board of Team Proposition was much clearer. To be clear, we did not shift. From first speaker, we told you how we are willing to engage on the spectrum of state actors, non-state actors, and my first speaker's response on bounty hunters was clashing with their second speaker's substantive. It was proving that bounty hunters and white hat hackers aren't part of this debate because that is not a cyber attack. So huge misrepresentation from their side. The Board of Team Proposition understood that sometimes military responses are needed. So we can take down the infrastructure so they can't just move around. So we can take down, for example, the cyber specialists who engage in cyber warfare. So we can attack this infrastructure and ensure it never happens again. The Board of Team Proposition won on the idea of escalation, which by the way was a substantive they brought up in first and just dropped down the table when we pushed them, leaving gaping huge holes in their case. We told you how we result in less escalation because on outside we don't embolden these people to go forward even more. In the Board of Proposition, we won on the metrics they themselves set for us. Because we understood that a military response is proportional, that it is able to surgically take out these people and the infrastructure they depend on, that it is effective because it is the only way to ensure we can do this and not let these attacks happen again. We understood that cyber attacks are an attack on our living space we are very proud to propose.
Previous speaker spent 4 minutes and 6 seconds. 4 minutes and 6 seconds.
Thank you, Tom.